Everything that happens is a consequence of the decisions I make and choices and relationships.
I wish I had known a lot of stuff when I decided to retire.
It's understanding and sharing what I wasn't prepared for coming into retirement.
It's definitely a learning experience.
It's interesting to see my colleagues that are still teaching talking about retirement being that magical moment.
This is a presentation of the BC Public Sector Retiree Group. BC Public Sector Retiree Group comprises the BC Retired Teachers Association, the Municipal Pension Retirees Association, the British Columbia Government Retired Employees Association, and the College Pension Plan Retirees. Today's presentation, What They Don't Tell You About Retirement.
My name is George Davison. I am the president of the College Pension Plan Retirees Association. And this is the first of the Public Sector Retiree Group's videos that we would like to turn into a series. And the working title of it is Things Pencorp Didn't Tell You When You Were Retiring. So we have a group of recent retirees, and I'd just like to ask each of you to identify yourself and tell us a bit about your background before we get into a few questions that we have about the retirement experience.
All right, well, I'll go first. My name's Gord Ditchburn. I am a recent retiree from the Vancouver Fire, the fire service, and retiring last April. And so it's been a year, and the vacation phase has ended, and now settling into what full retirement looks like. I've recently taken on a role with the Municipal Pension Retirees Association, being acclaimed as their president. So I'm sure that will give me some work to do. But again, it's understanding and sharing what I wasn't prepared for in coming into retirement. And that's for me what this conversation is all about.
Thanks, Gord. Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Welch. I'm the BCGREA second vice president and the editor of the Pen. So I deal with all the communications for the Retired Government Employees Association. I retired about 8 years ago, and so this is twofold for me. On the association side, I'm interested to share the information with new retirees and let them know things that they didn't know, and give them promise for the future. And as a past retiree, it's quite interesting how everybody's different. And I wish I had known a lot of stuff when I decided to retire 8 years ago. So thank you for having this.
Well, thanks, Tammy. I'll ask Ron next, also from the Government Retirees Association.
Hi, my name is Ron Welch, and I guess you'd call me a rookie pensioner. I'm just on paid leave before pension. So for me, it's learning. I guess you could say I'm still on the holiday mode because I'm on paid leave, but I'm learning the different things with regards to extended health and dental and all those types of things. So it's been quite an education for me, and just listening to folks that are my compatriots that have retired before me, and sort of the upsides and the pitfalls. So it's definitely a learning experience.
Thanks, Ron. Judy.
Hi there, I'm Judy Stewart. I am a retired teacher from the BCTF, and so drawing my pension through the Teacher's Pension Plan. I kind of retired twice. The first time I retired from the classroom, and that was 3 or 4 years ago, depending on my memory. And I retired from my classroom, but then agreed to stay on for one more year to work in the local union office uh, here in, I'm not sure, do you want a location? Here on Vancouver Island.
Sure.
And so I was double dipping. I was drawing a pension from the teacher's pension plan, but also working half time in the local union office because we had a brand new president. So I was considered the support for that. So I found that very satisfying, but that too came to an end. And then I became fully retired and learned the various phases of retirement. So it's interesting to see my colleagues that are still teaching talking about retirement being that magical moment, and knowing that they don't know quite what's coming after they retire, because there is that post vacation like feeling before you actually recognize this is your new life and what you're going to do with it and how you're going to deal with all of the different aspects of your life now that you're not a working teacher.
Thanks, Judy. Kate.
Good morning. I'm Kate Ross. I've worked in the post-secondary system in British Columbia for almost 39 years. 22 of those years were in the college system, and so I recently retired 2 years ago, and have been enjoying it immensely. And yes, it is a transition, but I feel like I've been able to approach it in a really positive way and feel very successful in terms of how the transition's gone. I've recently become a director on the college pension plan, and that's been great because part of I think the transition to retirement is meeting meeting other new people and actually continuing to learning to grow. So.
Thanks, Kate. And last but not least, Ken.
Morning, I'm Ken Shaw. I retired a little over 2 years ago, and it's not really retirement, it's really more like switching careers. So during the pandemic, I expanded my garden and started to donate food to the food bank, and then each year after that, continued to expand it. So now it's basically a farm in the middle of the city. And so my hobby has basically become a full-time job with one employee. And I mean, there's no problem with the transition. I've been involved with pension work for the past 20 years with the Federation of Post-Secondaries Pension Committee, and been the chair of it, and now on the Retirees Association. So yeah, I didn't really notice the transition. It was more like I got the time to do what I really wanted to do. And I think the most unique thing, I know I have some friends, it's like they're trying to figure out how to entertain themselves, and because they're living a life of sort of entertaining themselves rather than one of having a purpose. So really what retirement has been is been able to, as they say, do what you want to do rather than what you have to do, and then not being in this large bureaucratic organization that often basically opposes any creative ideas you have. I'm able to basically dream and act upon any idea that I have to essentially make my farm and my business more successful. And that's the challenge that I really like, because everything that happens is a consequence of the decisions I make and choices and relationships.
Okay, thanks, Ken. So I have a series of questions, not many of them, like 4 or 5, though those are a bunch of sub-issues that are involved in one of them. But I'm just going to start off with a general question, and don't all of you feel obliged to answer every question, but we just want to know what you didn't know going into retirement.
Let's start, since nobody else will. I didn't know about the social differences. So some of my friends were still working, so I couldn't really hang out with them because I wasn't working. And then I had friends that were 10, 15 years older than me that were part of seniors centers, and they were active in, painting and hiking trips and doing all of this stuff. And whenever I joined them, they always called me the kid. So I felt out of place because I retired at 56. So I really felt out of place. I felt like I had no sense of purpose. My husband was still working as well. So it was really difficult at that time. I had about 2 years where I was really struggling. We had COVID, which my husband was still working. So he was working from home. So he didn't really notice as much as me. But because I was retired and I had no support group, really, people were working or so it was really hard to get through those first 2 years. And then, so I didn't know what to do. So socially and emotionally, it was really difficult for me when I first retired. What I ended up doing is just by chance, I went to a BCGRE meeting. That was so, it was good. I ended up being elected treasurer, and then it's just grown from there. And now I'm so busy. My son tells me that I have to retire from retirement.
Yes.
But I love it. So
I think
now.
I think you bring up a really important point, Tammy, about the fact that it depends at the age that you retire and the time, like the time that you retire, right? And time of year even, or into something, right? And I know exactly. I think I'd have experienced retirement very differently if I had retired in my 50s compared to retiring in my 60s, where I had lots of friends that were also retiring. So it made that transition, I think, a little bit easier. And I had friends who were kind of waiting for me to retire, kept saying, you need to retire so we can start to do things. So I think that's a really important thing for people to think about in terms of when they retire.
I was going to say, for me, transition, we started, well, I worked for Ministry of Finance for 36 years. I didn't say that before, but prior to COVID, we had a project of working from home and working in the office. And then when COVID hit, well, we could slip seamlessly into working from home. So for me, retirement hasn't been the big change as far as the area you work in, right? So I worked in the office for, 31 plus years. Talking to folks that had retired from the office, more of a change, whereas we're working from home, your office is a spare bedroom, right? So the change for me retiring, besides closing up the laptop and putting the phone away, hasn't been probably as stark as folks that were in a culture of going into the office every day. So I think more and more folks that are going to be retiring in the future and are selecting, say, working from home and office, the transition may not be as stark. And then I would say, for me anyhow, it hasn't been as abrupt, right? Because I haven't been in the office for a few years, except for the odd time when we have meetings. So yeah, anyhow, that's my takeaway on it.
I think for me, it was, and Tammy kind of touched on it, but I think for me, the real loss was the loss of identity. And, I coming from a firefighting background, very much the camaraderie and the teamwork. We didn't work from home in that sense. We were there. And when you walk out that door that last time, that's it. And you wake up the next day and you're no longer, if you will, the occupation you're in. You're for me, no longer a firefighter. I was a retiree. And that for me had a different meaning. It was a loss of structure. It was a loss of purpose in the sense of now I have to find something different. But initially the mindset is I'm no longer who I was. And to accept that took a little while to work through. And I went back to one of the work sites about 2 months ago, and I very much felt like an outsider when I walked in. It was no longer my job; it was somebody else's job, and I didn't. When I got to the door of the fire hall, the individual who greeted me had no idea who I was. Not, and not that I was anybody special, but I had served my time and gained a level of seniority that your name had a reasoning to it. Now the person couldn't tell you who I was. The next person didn't know who I was, and I was meeting people that, again, I had nothing in common with, didn't know them, and so I very much, like I said, felt like an outsider to a career that I had had for a significant amount of my life, and it was just hard to come to terms with that. That I was prepared for the finances, I was prepared for the differences, prepared for walking away in the sense, but that whole mental side of it was a real tough one. And I've talked to other police, fire, paramedics, and the like, and we seem to have that same loss of meaning. And I think it takes a while to get that back, because you can only hunt and fish and play golf and do certain things so much, and then all that ends too. So you've got to have a strategy going into it. I mean, fortunately, I had some other work to do, but it was still a loss. And when you go somewhere and say, "Well, what do you do?" I'm a retiree. It's a different meaning than saying I am this or I am that. And that was a struggle. Anyway, that was the hardest part of adjusting. Some days it's still there, but that was a hard part of adjusting to retirement. All the presentations I went to never said a word about the mental side of retiring. It was all about finances. It was all about having all your ducks in a row, but it never talked about, are you mentally prepared to retire from your occupation, right? So
my husband and I had quite a conversation at one point. He retired 2 years before me, which I actually think is a good thing. He shouldn't retire at the same time. And for him, it was about feeling relevant, like losing that sense of feeling relevant. And it was interesting because I haven't felt that yet. I had this very large job, and I think I came to understand a bit of how we have different identities. And I recognized that I had lots of different identities, so I didn't have to rely on that one identity of what I was at work to actually have a sense of purpose or a sense of who I was. And you're right. I think it would be very helpful if there could be conversations about that, right? So that, and maybe even starting to recognize your identities, right? That you're, whether you're an uncle or a father or a mother or a grandmother or whatever it is, someone who's on a board, or all these things that give us a sense of who we are and how important those are.
Yeah, I'm going to say my experience echoes Gord's, in that for years, because women hadn't been long in the workforce, we were told that when men retired, that they would lose that sense of identity, et cetera, et cetera. So I was shocked when I found the same thing for myself, and I hadn't realized that I did have that identity as a teacher. But we must have, some kind of reputation, because we can say we're retired teachers and people kind of either put us in a slot that's a positive one or a negative one. I'm not quite sure. But for me, I thought I was prepared because I had done the transition from out of the classroom, and partly that happened because of some ageism in the education system that are long-time foundational perspectives were not seen as progressive anymore. And so a little bit of ageism was part of my reason for leaving there. But I had been asked to stay on in that role of support in the local office. And so I recognized that, someone was still recognizing and appreciating my skills. So when I completely retired, was a shock because here at home, my skills were not appreciated. My husband, who had been retired for 5 years, had created a nice, comfortable routine for himself. And so I was intruding. And so it was a shock to find out that I wasn't appreciated here at home. Yes, I was welcome to come home and, be here with him, but I knew that that wasn't what I wanted. And on another hand, because of I was in the pensions with the BCTF, as I retired, two of the retired teachers members on the pension committee quickly appreciated my skills and knew that those were needed in the retired teachers side, and so they had me signed up and applying for the pensions committee before I had actually even put in my final paperwork. So I had that after that shock of not being appreciated at home. I knew that there were other places that appreciated my skills. And so knowing that that's what I needed in order to still feel productive and in that age category, I became very much more involved with the BCRTA. So, and now I've become a branch president and I'm on the pensions committee, and that is a great deal of satisfaction to still be using those skills and satisfying my need to be needed, I guess, but also to be able to work through the phases of retirement as I go through that and see that others are doing the same thing as they come through from retiring fresh, out of the school system and into something that they had been aware of.
Thanks, Judy.
I'll, one comment. I think before retirement, you imagine you have all this time available to you, and you're going to get a whole bunch of things done. Whether it's the ongoing renovation or organizing photos, and once you're retired, you realize, okay, you do have all the time now that's available, and it's like, holy smokes, doesn't seem to be enough time. You have to start to prioritize and and make some decisions as to what's important. I found continuing on with the work with the pension committees, that's been interesting, and returning back to the college pension group this year after a 2-year absence, and seeing that most of the people around the table are brand new, and suddenly I felt like I'm the old guy that has some experience. That was a strange feeling at the time. And then conversely, joining the CPPR, College Pension Plan Retirees Group, is like rejoining back with a bunch of people that were sort of my mentors when I got involved back 20 years ago. So it's kind of funny being in the same role. But I think the last point is, of course, your energy diminishes with age, and I mean, if your hobby or goal is climbing mountains or long distance cycling, if you retire late and it's like, well, you just can't physically quite do that anymore. So my advice to anyone is, retire as soon as you can afford to do it, because there's only so much life, and what's really important is productive life and doing some of the things that you want to do.
Quality of life, yes. Thank Ken. So my next question is, what was the biggest surprise you encountered in retirement?
I'll start off since I just finished. How much I enjoyed not going to meetings.
Yeah.
I think there's a lifetime quota of meetings you can endure. So now just go to a couple of years.
Yeah. The meeting stuff. I'm not missing that at all, for sure.
I think this one of the surprises was, and I may have been mentioned earlier, but you're looking at all this, if you will, free time, and I don't think I could fit the job back into my schedule today
Yeah.
because my
Agree.
my thought of retiring and like I'm going to have my whole day free. Well, my day is full, whether it's doing something like this, whether it's going to a meeting, whether it's spending time with my grandkids, or just spending time doing what I want to do now on my schedule. And yes, there's other obligations along the way, but I think that the biggest surprise was that my day fills up faster, it seems, than it did when I was actively working. And so, and I'm surprised at sometimes how little time I have.
Time seems to go quicker.
I think that you're
Yeah.
so right about that. It just like zooms by. But I one of my big surprises is that weekends mean something completely different.
Mm.
It's such a funny thing because I pack so much into the week between Monday and Friday because it's so fun to do things that you want to do when there's not a whole bunch of other people around. Doing maybe going out for hike because yes, I'm still trying to hike, and get out and do the things that you want to do, and so they mean something different. The other thing too I thought about was that I'm so much surprised, but I'm just really pleased to be able that you can make new friends and new friend groups. And I don't think anybody ever talks about that. Everybody kind of thinks you're already in a kind of a groove, or you have your friends. But because you're taking on new things that maybe you always wanted to do, like for me, I always wanted to sing in a choir, just never had time for it. And how you can actually, as a result of that, actually have new friends and new friendships develop. And that's a really wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. The time aspect. I find that time is more precious now because I get to choose what I want to do and when I want to do it and how long I'm going to spend on a task in order to get it done. And that, and when I need to go somewhere, such as a meeting, it seems to take twice as long to get ready as I used to have. There've been a couple times where we were traveling and leaving early, and so you had that pressure of having to get everything done and out the door by a certain time. And I remember how stressed I would be every morning as I left for school in order to get there on time. And now when it happens rarely, it's like, well, it's a good thing I don't work anymore because I wouldn't be able to handle the pressure of getting there. So again, the time and choices of what you do, when you do, and who you do it with are all ours. And what Kate said about weekends, yes, weekends have a different perspective than they used to. Weekends when we worked used to be the catch-up days where what you didn't get to during the week is what you would do on the weekend. And now weekends are, some people say they're an extension of the week, but I like to still differentiate them with what we do in our social activities. So it is a different type of life than working life.
I'm surprised that the time thing, I'm always running late too. And my husband has told me that you need to be half an hour to an hour earlier than you think you need to be, because we've been cutting it close quite often lately to catch ferries and things like that. But I was surprised at how much I enjoy, I'll be sitting at my desk working on something for some volunteer thing, and then I'll just watch the squirrels playing in the backyard or watch the birds at the bird feeder. And I'm surprised at how much time and how much joy I can get out of just watching the nature.
Mm.
I didn't pay attention to it that much when I was working because, of course, you're always running here, running there, picking up a kid, doing that, whatever. And I'm surprised at how much I enjoy that now, whereas I never noticed it before. So that's really nice. And being able to say, no, I'm not going to a meeting before 10 o'clock. Forget it. Nope, not happening.
No.
Not happening. I don't care if we're going to play cards. I'm not there before 10 o'clock. So, being able to make your own time schedule is good.
So my next question is, it's kind of in the context. Last year at the BC Public Sector Pension Conference, the theme was living to 100. And I'm just wondering if you feel you're prepared to be retired longer than you worked.
Well, that'd be nice.
I
As long as I got my head still straight, that'd be good. Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to that. I think it was a few years back when I was and had a retired member come and have lunch with the crew one day in the fire hall, and he explained it very, very nicely that the more you can take out than what you put in, and you're winning. And living long, enjoying your pension in a healthy way, to me, is what it's all about. And we all put time into our careers. We all paid into our pensions. They're worth every nickel to us. But taking out as much as you can, if you will, to enjoy your life is what it's all about. There's no prize for putting the most in, but there is a big prize for taking the most out.
The interesting thing is, I actually think that one of the things I came to recognize was that we need more time to actually care for ourselves as we age. And that's one of the things that I was really focused on right from the beginning, was actually getting that exercise that I knew that I needed and I wanted to have, and getting into a routine, because this, live a long and healthy life is really the goal. I don't want to live to 100 and live the last 15 years not being cognizant of the world, or being unable, you're physically going to decline, but that you'd still be able to connect and have a life, have a social life, have that's so important. So I think that one of the things is that you do have to figure out in your retirement, what are you doing to actually ensure your longevity, and a healthy longevity.
It's a good question, because when you're in your 60s, the thought of living to 100, some almost 40 years in the future, it's kind of like being in your 20s and not being able to comprehend retirement.
Exactly.
Yeah. In your 20s, you can't believe that the pension will exist. I mean, we're old enough to remember what it was like, thinking, geez, the year 2000, that's a strange number. That's going to be weird. Science fiction. So, it's an appropriate topic to start talking about, because there's more planning and thinking around that as well.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Before I retired, I noticed there was some folks that probably didn't take the best care of themselves before they retired, and then you'd see them afterwards, and they weren't looking the healthiest. And I kind of swore to myself that I would try to take care of myself coming into retirement, with the idea that wouldn't it be nice to feel better, be in better shape once I hit retirement, so I can do more things. So I'd say I don't know, probably 2 to 3 years prior to retiring is to take up healthy habits, work out. I have to say, with retiring, it's nice to be able to work out in the morning. For me, anyhow, I used to find that trying to work out or do anything after work, I was already tired. So I just kind of made it a little bit harder. So, yeah, so the idea, I guess, is that you can have a happy retirement, that you can get around. Um, there's always, you can always have aches and pains and whatnot, but the fact that you can make the most out of your retirement by being healthy, going for walks, going for hikes, doing a workout, appeals to me. And, hopefully that'll transition into a long, happy life. So.
Yeah, I viewed the that 100-year life video last year at the pension court, and it was very interesting for me to discover, and I was impressed with the 100-year-olds that they showed, but I discovered that wasn't going to make it to 65. That for some reason, and I guess it's because it's that retirement age, but it was as if I was going to fall off a cliff at 65, and that was it. And so I kind of had to work through that fairly quickly because I then reached it and went past it. But the 100-year life means that we need to treat our working lives differently and prepare for retirement differently, because it really is a second life where we can pick up skills, or we can do things that we didn't before, but also acknowledging that our energy isn't going to be the same level as it was at 55. And I have a whole different perspective with that 100-year life now on Pope Leo, who now at 69 is starting a brand new set of skills and life that he's going to lead for. It could be until he turns 100, who knows? But that's the type of thing that I'm again shifting in my perspective too, as to what the transitions will be like. I have a mother that's going to be 90 this year, and thinking through all the phases that she's gone through, helping me prepare, but not prepare, because of course that generation grew up at a different time period when health issues were different. We didn't have the technologies, all of the different medical advances that we do now that will affect what we'll be like when we become 90 or 100. So that just shifts my perspective again in terms of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to take care of this body for as long as possible.
And your mind.
Yes, definitely the mind. That for me, that was the most important aspect, was taking care of my mind, but then recognizing the body is there as well. Yeah.
Well, if you take care of your body, you actually do take care of your mind, right? The research is showing a lot of that. So,
all of that research helps us know what we need to be doing in order to have that longevity.
I have a different perspective because I have a chronic illness. And so my life expectancy I was told 20 years ago that it would be 75. And so I've done everything in my power to make sure that that isn't the case. And I think I'm succeeding. But for me to think past 75 at this point in time, it's still difficult. And so it's an interesting question. And I know my husband's always going, nope, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And I probably will do it because I'm just stubborn enough to. But it's a hard question to think about that for me, just because of the medical situation. And, but I totally agree. Like I love watching my husband, want to improve his health and stay healthy. and be physically fit so that, he can live the best life that he can live. And I try and do that as much as I can, but it just seems a lot harder for me. So just different
Yeah,
perspectives.
the health issue wasn't one of the ones that was on my list. Things like finances and, are you going to have a pension until you're 100? Benefits, the post-retirement benefits are not what they were when you were employed. Some have talked about the coping with the loss of regular work and routine. Others have talked about coping with their spouse. I've been retired for 4 years now, but effectively for probably 6 years because of COVID and not teaching during that period. And my wife is retiring in 6 weeks. So I've been the chief cook and bottle washer for the last 5 years while she's been going to work. It's going to be a shock to our systems when she's retired, and some of those things that I will hope I'll be able to pass on. And I was just going to say the health issue. I cut the grass for the first time yesterday, and I had to turn down a golf game because my knees aren't capable of walking around a par 3 course anymore. And I'm waiting to get on a list for knee replacement that slowed me down. And I guess the other point I wanted to make was, my dad worked for 38 years, was a pensioner for 38 years as well before he passed away, just shy of 100. So I don't think it's something that people who are in their 60s think about living that long. And the one of the sessions at that conference was talking about the phases of retirement.
Right.
Doing the travel early on, renovations to your house, to make it comfortable. So we've done that in order to keep in it as long as we can. Or downsizing if you're not going to stay in the house, or moving to a ranch if you're in a 4-level split. Wills and estate planning. Those are issues that, I've ducked for a number of years. And the last time we wrote a will was when kids were, 2, 3, 4 years old. And now they're in their 30s and 40s. And I've got a 35-year-old living in my basement. So, the issue of being retired and looking after aging parents, but also still helping out kids who need help because of whatever the job situation, health reasons these days.
We just finished talking about, are we prepared to live, for a lot longer and whatnot. And I think the last 2 points you touched on, George, was, our challenges perhaps are more pronounced and more unique than our previous pensioners, if you will, and the fact that we are looking after aging parents a lot more. We're aging ourselves, and now we're looking after aging parents. For a variety of reasons, we have adult children either not leaving the nest or moving back to the nest, and bringing those challenges. I think we're facing a number of unique challenges that perhaps pensioners previously have not faced, and it's how are we going to continue to move forward? When you look at our finances, we're prepared to live for X amount of years, but where does that take us? And so I think we've got some interesting challenges ahead of us, regardless of what occupation we come from. I think we our own health, physical and mental, is paramount, but I think those are all being affected by what we're facing on a day-to-day basis in retirement, in supporting those that we've been supporting for a number of years, perhaps at a higher economic threshold. And how does that new stress affect us?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's an interesting one, right? Because when like you said, when my mom and stepdad retired, their parents had been passed away for many, many years, even before they retired. Right. And so that's it may be true that we're kind of the first generation that actually has a lot of people still have living parents. And what are the implications of that? The good thing is we see them age. We've seen that. gained that capability to see. And so it makes me think about the transition, like knowing that 80 is a marker, right? It can change things dramatically for people, right? These things, like I've observed, and I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do? I don't really want to be also a burden to my children if I can help it, right? To actually be able to make decisions so that they don't have to make decisions, because that's another thing that you see, right? That sometimes decisions aren't made, and then you have to help or force those, like, having the conversation with my mother about giving up her license. Right. Like these things that we've had to do. So I think hopefully we can be more informed, and that's a good thing, right? That can come from that.
Yeah, I do a lot of talking with my 90-year-old mother. I probably 75% of the time, her caregiver. She lives on her own, so I'm over there a lot. I'm on the phone with her a lot. I'm, looking after all her appointments and everything. So, as I'm in my 60s, and some days it's hard with my own health that, my mom needs something. So then, I drag myself out to help deal with my mom, because I feel, she's 90. It's at my own peril sometimes. So those are struggles that we go through in our transition. So yeah, I've tried, my husband and I, we've done a lot of planning so that we don't have a burden like that on our children, so that everything's documented, the paperwork's there and they know what's going on. And so it will be a lot easier for them. But with my mom, it's my dad had taken care of everything. So my dad passed, I think, the year before I retired. And so it was quite a struggle. And being that caregiver for her all this time it takes its toll.
I agree.
But it is a joy to know that she's still around, and that I can still, she can still irritate me any day she wants.
That's what moms do.
That's what moms do. And, I'm very thankful that I have that extra time with her. I wouldn't change that for the world. But, I do realize that you have to pay the price.
The fact that how fortunate we are that we actually have a base pension, and then there's the CPP and OAS and the other kinds of supports federally that are in place. So we're very fortunate as individuals and as a country, really, because even if people don't have a pension, they still have a good strong base with CPP and old age security. And yet, there are people who are pensioners who were in pension plans that were in the lower end of income, and so as cost of living, because that, I think, probably for a lot of people would be a concern. And if they don't own a home but they actually are renters, all these things that
those are vulnerable people. Yes,
it just makes you more vulnerable. So as you're getting ready for retirement, how do you kind of decrease those vulnerabilities, right? Or find a way to have that stability that you think that you need, because losing your housing is like it's a big deal, and that can happen to anybody, even if they have a pension, right? And so these are the things that I think about, George, when you think about, other than, when I was talking about health, because I'm thinking about that for myself, and partly because my mom has dementia, so it really concerns me. But that those are the kinds of things I think that we don't think about, as we're getting close to retirement. People think about, I don't have to work anymore, but it's figuring out all the components that are there. And George, yes, you need to get a new well. Get that done. Get that done. If you don't have that done, you should get that done.
It's on the list. The last question is about whether your retiree association, how it assists you or can assist you in transition, support you during retirement. Are we doing enough? What more could we do? What would make it easier for a new member to join a retiree association?
Well, I'll jump in. I think if we're talking our respective for us, the MPRA, we cover a wide variety of employers, almost 1,000 employers, which is a different audience than the other groups, if you will. And I look at my own experience when I retired and signed a mountain of paperwork. The form to join the MPRA was not in that group, and I knowing about it, but I had to seek it out. And so I think there are avenues we need to look at in assisting not only members but employers in promoting the work that we do. Perhaps working with our respective pension plan, but I think it's also, a responsibility of these groups to go back to our active members, our active associations, and make sure that the leadership of those respective unions, employers, are supporting the work that we do and helping us transition people who are about to retire into our respective associations. I think there's some work to do. And it's, I talk to people, they go, we didn't even know this existed. How do I find out about it? Where do I find it? So as much as people are being prepared for retirement, I think there's a piece that needs to be make sure is added to that. So, because I think, again, not knowing what I know now, and I thought I knew a fair bit about the pension world, opened my eyes to sense that how many other people are sitting in the same position that just don't know these organizations exist.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Gord is that there is a gap. And I know the BC Retired Teachers Association is a great supporter for retirees, and we try to provide that information about retiring. But it is all about the numbers, and we have recognized for a number of years that there's some missing information there. But we're very careful when we provide pre-retirement workshops for teachers that we don't provide exact financial advice, because everyone's situation is different.
It's different.
And so that's another perspective, as you can't really inform people about what it's like to be retired, because everyone's situation is different. Some people are single, some are married, some have young children, all the different variations. But the big gap I find, as Gord said, is the working union and perhaps the employer, because when you're retired, you know what it's like to be retired and what's important. When you're working, you're so busy working and looking to that magical number for when you can retire that you don't understand all the different aspects of retirement, the social aspects, the psychological, all the things that we've talked about earlier. So that's one thing that the BCRTA has attempted to change that gap. But again, the working teachers and their leaders, as sympathetic as they might feel they are to retirees and know that what the retirement is, don't understand the importance of passing all that information from a retirement group to help their colleagues prepare properly. So numbers are one thing, and psychological is a different thing, but that's an intangible that we can't always provide for all the working people that we know. And we can pass on our little tidbits, buy your car, use all your benefits, all that stuff. Don't say yes to everything that comes along. You don't have as much time as you think, and yet we hear the same things. 2 or 3 years on, retirees saying what we're saying, and others have said before us. So there is some magical thing that we're not quite finding to pass on to working teachers yet.
I think it's about I've only recently gotten involved, and I think people don't understand what the organizations do, the different retiree associations do. I think as a retiree, I wouldn't have understood unless I went to a couple of meetings. And so it's how do you get people that create that awareness, and that it can also provide some of those things that you're talking about, Judy, the intangibles that help, because you can build another network, right?
Yes.
that can support you, and so I think because when we're retiring, we're really kind of focused in on our own particular situation, right? We're thinking about, well, how am I going to do this transition? Do I have enough money? Oh my goodness. What's it going to look? What will it feel like, right? And I've got to manage differently. All these kinds of things. So you're focused on that. So you're not yet thinking about what these other things that you actually need to really feel purposeful and whole as a person as you're going through that transition. So how do we catch them at the right moment, right? And that's an interesting thing for us to think about.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
go ahead.
but
Go ahead.
when people are retiring, it's a very romanticized process.
Yeah, it is.
I don't have to go to work anymore. No more alarms, meetings, report cards, etc., etc. And I've got all these friends that I've worked with all these years, and we're just going to continue being friends. And then, as someone's mentioned here, yeah, they're still working, so their time is different.
It's different.
And things move on. People come in and replace others, and then you don't know the others as well as you do. And the people that are retiring want to be free to do what they want to do. And so it's like everyone dissipates into all different corners. And the one thing I find that BCRTA has done is, because we do offer extended health benefit plans, we have teachers that gradually come into the fold of BCRTA, because through word of mouth and probably all the other aspects that we use to advertise it, come back for the extended health benefit, and then discover, wow, there's a whole other social aspect here that I'm missing out on, of people that are like me now because I'm retired. So it is yeah. But how do you catch them? We've just kind of gone around in that question a few times here.
Yeah. With the BCGREA, we had a couple issues, and that is that they're not doing retirement seminars anymore, like in person. It's just an online course that you can take if you want. And so our association had a one-screen shot in there, and it wasn't very good. So we used to be able to go to the sessions and talk to the people, but that's no go anymore. So now we've like yesterday we were at the Perks Arena in Victoria for the Lifestyles Fair. So it was for seniors, and we had a booth there, and we were talking to everybody about the association. But a lot of people also didn't know, because of our name, that it's not just provincial ministries that can join our association. It's also the ambulance. It's also the bus drivers and the ferry workers. And there's a whole bunch of them that, anybody that was a Crown corporation, anybody that's receiving a public pension, can join. So it's, the name is a little bit of a misdemeanor, and we're working on that. But it's word of mouth, because when I got my pension, I signed up for it. There was just a little thing: do you want to join the BCGREA? Have this taken off your pension. I had no idea what it was, but I just thought, sure, why not? And I didn't go to a meeting until 2 years later. And you've got to get them to the meetings.
Yeah.
So you've got to be in the public eye somehow to let people know that we're out there. And of course, you've got your affinity partners like the BCTRA. You've got your insurance, you've got your travel insurance, you've got your eye care, you've got travel partners. Like, there's all sorts of benefits from being a member. We also have a person on the board of trustees for the pension. There's lots of benefits to being a member, as well as just the social aspect.
One of the things that might be a barrier, and it's an erroneous perception with BCTF members, is that the BCRTA is an extension of the BCTF. It's a political group.
Yeah.
And yes, we do support public education, but not to the same extent of the political organization that the BCTF has. So I know when I present the brochure, we get the little face, and it's like, no, I'm not interested. I didn't like some of the activities the union did, and I don't want to do that now. And so I gently try to tell them it's not that. It's that, now there's
it's something different.
Your retirement needs. And so I'm wondering if that might be a barrier for other retirement groups as well.
Yeah, it's the same with us. We get linked to the BCGEU quite often. And so, yeah, the same thing.
That's a very valid point, I think. Yeah.
So Pension Corp has taken over that kind of role with their 3-minute YouTube videos or their 45-minute courses. But there are things that obviously they don't tell you. And one of the things that we've been working on with the public sector pension group is what things can we do in common to share information about how we get to retirees, how we get to actives in order to educate them on what we do. I mean, in the last year alone, the college retirees have been consulted on benefit changes. They've been consulted on how the inflation adjustment account is funded. So we talk to partners, we talk to trustees, we lobby for pensioners, college retirees. We have affiliates from some of the institutions, and places like Camosun and Ligera and BCIT and Kwantlen have active retiree associations. But to get involvement from them onto the more general provincial College Pension Retirees Association is difficult at times. Simon Fraser just became a partner in the college pension plan, and so there's 1,500 new members that we're trying to access in order to explain what we do. And here's what we do, and you can join for free for the first year, and then we can help people with questions that they have about retirement. It has been great. So
thank you so much, Tim, for organizing it.
Yeah.
George, for
Thank you.
being our MC, taking us through it.